Welcome back to Next Life Garage. We're working on the Nissan again today. When we took it out to try and do the 14-pound wastegate tuning, it didn't want to make more than probably 8-9 pounds. Kind of felt like it was hitting a rev limiter, kind of throwing you toward the windshield and going again, and throwing you toward the windshield and going again. But I wasn't anywhere near redline. I was around the 3,500 plus RPM, and somewhere in that 8-9 pound boost range. And it just kind of felt like it was hitting a fuel cut, like it would do if you hit a rev limiter. Got to thinking to myself, what would cause it to make a fuel cut like that? Mass airflow sensor would make it do that, and manifold absolute pressure sensor would make it do that. I did run diagnostic code on the OBDII with my little checker, and it is saying that we have a problem on our manifold absolute pressure circuit. So I've got my trusty service manual that I harp on so much on the channel over here to the side that tells me what the voltages should be on these things under certain situations. I've already warmed up the engine, took it out for a little spin, did manage to get it to duplicate the problem while I was warming it up, except this time it happened around the 6-pound mark, so we definitely got something going on in there. I'll get you guys out of the sky. Well, I'm going to leave you in the sky, bring you a little bit closer and show you what I'm going to be doing to check on these items. And if we got good circuit, there's a switch involved, and then there's the manifold absolute pressure sensor itself. So there's two items on that circuit that we're going to be checking on. If I find something to be out of the ordinary, that'd be a good thing. But if I don't find something out of the ordinary on the sensors, then we're going to have to use one, maybe both of the channels that I'm not using on the FIC to kind of fool these things into thinking that everything's okay. Maybe just after 5 years of running boost through an ECU that's not supposed to see boost, it's like, hey man, something's going on here. So we're going to cut some fuel, and we're not going to let you do this anymore until you figure it out. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. But I'll bring y'all in closer so y'all can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to get to it. Got my Mity Vac here for a vacuum source to check the barometric pressure sensor. We'll be using that in a little while. There are a couple of things I'm not going to be able to check without the bride being here, checking the continuity between sensors and the main computer harness. But I've got the absolute pressure switch down here. We're going to check some power and ground to it, make sure it's got good power and ground first. Switch is disconnected. We're going to hook our console up to 20 volt. This is close to 12 volt that I have, and we're going to get to checking. Now turn the ignition switch on. We're on this little procedure here. We're going to check voltage between terminal 1 on the sensor right here and engine ground, and we should have battery voltage, and that's the terminal number 1 that we're going to be checking to the ground. And we got battery voltage there, so that's good. What I need the wife for is to check terminal 2 on the sensor here to terminal 66 on the ECU. But holding these pins in by myself without help doesn't really work, and checking voltage at the same time, or continuity. And basically, to check continuity, you can see here we're sitting on 20 volt DC. To check continuity, I'd roll her over to 20 ohms. You can see we're out of limit right now. But you touch the two probes together, and you can see we got continuity there. The higher the number, the more the resistance, and we're at 0. And again, once you take the prongs apart, we're out of limit. Oh well. Sensor back up, since I know we got power to it at least. There could still be something wrong inside that switch. We'll get to checking that though later. We're going to check on the barometric pressure sensor itself now. Flipping the old manual back to it. Going to check continuity on the ground on the pressure sensor itself. Disconnect it. We're on continuity already. We'll go from terminal 1 here to engine ground. And we got 0.02 ohms of resistance, so we do have continuity there. You know, the amount of wire in there is what's causing it to have slightly more resistance than just touching the leads together. So we've got continuity there. Next we're going to check voltage to the sensor. For that we'll turn the ignition switch back on. And this is going to be terminal 3 on the opposite side of this harness connector. Going to switch her back to voltage. We're in terminal 3 on the positive. And we're going to go back to engine ground. According to the manual, we should have about 5 volts going to it right now. And we've got 5.11 volts. So we got good volts coming into the sensor. Next we're going to check how the sensor reacts to a vacuum. Going to leave the ignition switch on. I'm going to disconnect the vacuum lead from the barometric pressure switch. And we're going to hook it up to our Mity Vac so that we can apply some vacuum to it without starting the engine. And again, I've got my harness connector connected back to the barometric pressure switch sensor to the center. There it is. Okay, release our vacuum. We're at 425 on the signal. I've removed it from the power terminal number 3 and I put it on the signal wire back to the ECU, which is terminal number 2 on the sensor. And as I pull vacuum now, it should reduce our voltage. We're at 4.24 volts right now. And at 18 inches of mercury, we're down to 1.65 volts. So seems to be working like it should on the barometric pressure sensor. So next step's going to be to check the switch for vacuum continuity with and without power. If that checks out okay, then we've definitely got a problem that we need to correct with the FIC. I pulled the barometric pressure switch off of the car. Got some rudimentary power and ground hooked up to it. Got the Mity Vac hooked up to it. Right now, with no power going to it, we should not have a passageway between these two ports right here and here on the switch. So we'll go ahead and give her a pull, see if it holds vacuum. Yeah, we are holding vacuum with no power to the switch. So that checks okay. So now I'm going to hook power to the switch. You'll probably hear a little click in the switch. Y'all might not be able to hear it. I probably will. So I'm going to hook that up. Yeah, it is clicking. And when I apply power, there is zero vacuum in that switch. So the switch appears to be working like it should. And map sensor itself seems to be working like it should. So that tells me we're going to have to do some fooling on the factory computer with the FIC to make it think that everything's okay. I was hoping we were going to have a problem with one of these things, but I'm not that lucky. Wanted to update y'all on the barometric pressure switch. This is a new one. Reviewing the video, I had the Mity Vac turned towards y'all when I was checking the vacuum continuity on the old switch, and I saw when I was reviewing the video that it was actually leaking down. Don't know that it's supposed to leak down, so I went to the parts store. Luckily one of them within 20 miles of here had one of these things. So I went over there with my Mity Vac and hooked it up to the new one, and this one holds vacuum steady as a rock. So obviously there was something wrong with this original unit. Just to show you, new unit here, hook it up to the Mity Vac, give her a pull, and she's holding pretty steady for us. So there may have been something wrong with that switch. I guess I may have gotten lucky on this one. So I'm going to stick the new switch in, and we'll get to go out and try and do a little more tuning on it. See if this is what was causing our fuel cut issue, or what feels like a fuel cut issue. Still going to check the spark plugs, make sure everything's good there before we go out and do any more tuning on it. But hopefully this little guy right here is going to fix our problem that we were experiencing. We'll let you know what we find out. And I've got the barometric pressure switch installed in the car. We'll see if that'll eliminate our fuel cut issue that we're experiencing. I've got the old wastegate right here. You can see this one's solid mounted on the little pin where it attaches to the actuator armature on the turbo itself. The new wastegate down there has got a threaded one, and I loosened it up a little bit to make it easier to get onto the armature down there, which I probably shouldn't have done. That could very well be why we're not making but 9 pounds, as you turn that in, it's creating preload on the spring inside the housing here, and as I loosened that up, it was releasing preload on the spring in the housing here once you hook it up. I did go back and check my tune, the 14 pound versus the 7 pound that I had in it. I didn't miss anything in there as far as setting everything up goes. Fuel looked good, mass airflow sensor looked good, O2 settings looked good. So I don't think any of that stuff had anything to do with what we were experiencing out on the road. I hope that this barometric pressure switch and sensor is going to fix it. Won't know until we get out on the road, but I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready to warm the hands up and do a little tuning on this thing. See if we can get it lined up at least a 9 pound. Still duplicating the 9 pound when we get back out there. After we get it dialed in, we'll come back to the house and adjust on the spring a little bit more, see if we can't get that 14 pounds out of it. But until next time, don't take no wooden nickels and be good. Somebody's got to. I'll check y'all later, alligators.